The most expensive scale in this comparison is genuinely the best one. I'm not gonna pretend otherwise. But I wouldn't recommend it to most people watching this, and that's exactly what I want to explain. I've been using coffee scales for 5 years, 4 different ones, from less than €5 to 90. And after all that, my recommendation for the vast majority of you is somewhere in the middle, not at the top. Let me show you where the gaps actually are. 5 years ago, I bought a scale on Aliexpress for less than €5. I used it for 6 months, mainly to make espresso. I had to use my phone as a stopwatch. The scale had nothing, just weight, and it worked. I mention this because when I started, I had no idea how expensive this hobby was. I was already surprised with the prices for entry-level gear. Espresso machines, grinders, tampers, bottomless portafilters, baskets, everything was very expensive. And I lived in Brazil at the time, where you pay nowadays something close to 100% in taxes on imported goods. Every equipment is much more expensive for Brazilians. The €5 scale was the right call. I wasn't ready to commit more. I wanted the minimum needed for a good espresso. After 6 months, I upgraded to the Weightman, around €11 today, and the key addition is a built-in timer. Simple, but tracking time and weight simultaneously without juggling your phone actually helps. I use it for about a year and a half. I still have it 5 years later, but it has limits. The plate is small. If you want to brew over 60, you're limited to a mug. A higher carafe, even the size 02, is too large, and the plate has no thermal insulation. The load cells inside heat up, expand, and you will see the reading drift, maybe 1 gram by the end of a longer power. Not enough to ruin the cup, but it's there. Today, it's my travel scale, very portable, light, and cheap enough that if I lose it, the sadness will be proportional. If you're just starting out and budget is a real constraint, especially in a country with heavy import taxes, the Weightman is the minimum I would recommend. The €5 scale works, but the timer is a great add. My third scale was a Search Pen Tiny 2S. Bought it about 3 years ago for around $26. At the time, the reference in this category was the Time Warp Black Mirror Basic 2, selling for $50 to $60. The Tiny 2S was roughly half that. It has an espresso mode. I didn't use it much because when flow varies along the extraction, the scale can interpret that as the shot having stopped, and it cuts the timer. You're left without your stopwatch, and more critically, without a live weight reading at the moment you most need it. Then I use it in normal mode and start the timer manually. Not a deal breaker, but worth knowing. The auto mode for pour over though is excellent. It starts with the first drop and stops when you remove your cup. However, for people who remove the dripper for a little spin, it won't work. The change in weight will stop the measurements. Battery longevity is one of the things I genuinely appreciated. 800 mAh, rechargeable, and in the beginning, it lasted 1.5 to 2 months on a single charge. Now, 3 years later, it's more like 1 to 1.5 months. That's still exceptional for a scale at this price and size. Construction is noticeably better than the Weightman. It comes with a silicone cover that reduces temperature drift to something under 0.5 grams over a 2.5 minute V60. The footprint is about 10 by 10 centimeters, 2 centimeters tall, low enough to fit under a portafilter with a small espresso cup and even in a flare. At the time, the next option that fit the flare was the Time Warp Nano at 3 times the price. For pour over, a Harrow 02 fits on it, but seeing the display under the carafe is a bit difficult. For individual mugs, no problem. Today, This category has expanded a lot. Fuego, MHW3 Bomber, Movna, ICAP, all in the 20 to 30 euro range, the fancier closer to 40. In my opinion, this is the best cost to performance ratio available right now. If you can afford this range, that's where I would start. About 6 months ago, I bought a very cheap Bluetooth scale from Aliexpress for around 17 euros that supposedly worked with Arduino. Before that, the cheapest Bluetooth scale I actually knew compatible with Arduino was the Bookoo Themis Ultra at 90 euros. Expensive, I know, but an Akaya Lunar is at least 300 euros. In Espresso, as in many hobbies, the sky is the limit, so I wanted to know if there was an economy option. This scale has two modes, one up to 5 kilograms with 1 gram precision, another up to 2 kilograms at 0.1 gram precision. The second is what you would use for coffee. The construction feels cheap, plasticky. I don't know how it holds up over time. I haven't had it long enough to tell you, but the performance is acceptable. In steady state, the difference compared to the other scales was up to 0.5 grams, while powering up to 1 gram behind. The response time is clearly slower than the Tiny 2S and the Bookoo Themis Ultra, but nothing that will ruin your cup. The native app is for nutrition tracker. You can see the weight in real time, but it doesn't log your extraction. The good news? It works with Bean Conqueror, and with that you can get the full log. Long story short, it works, but the limitations are real, and in Espresso, they matter more than in pour over. I'll show you the numbers in a moment. A few months ago, Bookoo sent me this scale for testing, and to be clear, they had no access to this video before publishing, and no say in what I cover or my conclusions, as is standard for everything on this channel. I already made a full review of the Bookoo Themis Ultra. I'll leave a card here and a link in the description. What I want to do here is compare it directly against the other three. At 90 euros, this is clearly not a beginner scale, except if you are a millionaire beginner. For the vast majority of people starting out, it's more than they need. But for someone who wants more control, more data, and tools to understand what's happening in the cup, like flow rate in real time, coupling with a Bluetooth pressure sensor to monitor also the pressure alongside the extraction, this is a different category of product. Now the numbers. Pour over first. In terms of precision response time, Bookoo and Tiny 2S are remarkably close. Differences while powering were under 0.5 grams. In steady state, no more than 0.1 gram between them. The Weightman and the cheap Bluetooth scale are both clearly slower, sometimes more than 1 gram behind. In steady state, though, the cheap BLE was more accurate than the Weightman because the Weightman's plate heats up during use. The drift went from 0.1 gram after the first power to 0.4 after the second to 1.6 by the end of the extraction at around 1 minute and 50 seconds. That's the temperature affecting the load cells under the plate. A bit annoying, but again, 1 or 2 grams difference is not sufficient for you to notice the difference in pour-overs. Espresso is where the gaps matter more. The Weightman was less than half a gram behind the Tiny 2S during the extraction and under 0.1 gram at the end. That's fine. On a machine with a solenoid, the drip stops almost immediately after you stop the pump, the delay is minimized, and it's easier to keep your ratio on target. The cheap Bluetooth scale was 1.4 grams behind the Bookoo when I stopped the shot, with 0.3 grams difference at the end in steady state. And here's the critical point. On a machine without a solenoid, like the Longistilosa, there's more lag, which can translate into 2 or 3 grams more than expected. If you're seeing the weight 1.4 grams behind while pulling, By the time you react and stop without the solenoid, you may finish with 3 or 4 grams more in the cup. That's more than a 10% jump in your yield. With practice, you will compensate, I have no doubt. You will stop earlier than you would with a faster scale and probably land in the same error range. Same logic with Arduino, you would probably set your target 1 gram lower than you would with a hardware scale or a Bookoo. You can adapt, but you need to know the limitation is there. In the end, you can pull good espresso with any of these. The differences come down to budget, workflow, and what you want to do with the data. My recommendation, if you can spend 20 to 30 euros, start with the intermediate category. 10-2S, Fuego, ICAP, MHW 3 Bomber, that's the sweet spot. If budget is the real constraint, the Weightman is the minimum. If you want Bluetooth and a full data picture, the Bookoo Themes Ultra is great, and if Bluetooth is the goal, but budget is tight, the cheap Aliexpress option works, just bear in mind it's slower. And there are plenty of other scales on the market, similar to this, or for more specific use cases. It's just difficult to cover in depth all of them, so I decided to bring the ones I've been personally using in the last 5 years. I left the links in the description for all the products mentioned in this video. Most, if not all, will be affiliate links. And there are also discount codes for Bookoo and ICAP, valid as of when I'm filming this. Using the links costs you nothing extra, and if you would rather not, no problem at all. If this was useful, a like helps the channel, and subscribe if you want more content about making your gut shot with affordable gear. Thanks for watching, and ciao!